he called me the next day. He said, Lynn, he said, I got to give you some good advice. I said, what is it? He said, I was at the movie last night and I got to turning and switch. He said, you just actually burnt me up. So my wife said, look at me, I pulled my clothes off. She said, what happened to you? So I burned up my banker almost. And needless to say, in 2.5 months, we were out of business. We were broke. I done lost $15,000 and I had to pay it back, making $300 a week. And every time I'd go to make that payment, I'd want to cry, thinking, how in the world did I do this? So that's about as unconventional as you can get.
Hello and welcome to Rural Empires. Today we have a very special episode. I have with me my father, Josh Arnold, and my grandfather, Lynn Arnold. And between the both of them, there's around 60 plus years of experience and lots to learn from that. And me just getting started into the real estate and investing world, what better way to find guidance and leadership and mentorship in this path than to come to my father and grandfather who, like I said, have been in the real estate and investing world for quite some time, 60 plus years. So we're going to try to tap into that knowledge and that wisdom. And me and Harrison, the mentees of this program, quote unquote, we spent time and went over and made some valuable questions that we want to know. So that hopefully it'll benefit those people watching the video. So let's dive into the video. Granddaddy, just is glad to have you here. Dad, glad to have you here as always. Granddaddy, I just want to ask you some questions about your investing in real estate career. First off, could you kind of share your journey and experiences of where you are and how you got to where you are in your career today?
Well, first of all, I'm glad that you've asked me, you and your dad asked me to talk about this a little, although I've talked about it a lot over the last 40 years. But I'm pleased that I've got 2 sons and a grandson that has chosen the same career. Mm-hmm. So with that being, my journey started in 1982 when I was approached by this guy that I knew from Humboldt, Tennessee, who had a real estate and insurance office there, and he had bought one in Milan. And it was a successful business that he bought, but it was not doing well. And he'd had it a year or two. So we just ran into one another, and he said, how would you like to get in the real estate business? And I didn't know I just said, what do you mean? He said, if you'll get your license and get yourself prepared, I'll let you take over the office in Milan and run the office. And I said, is that all I got to do? He said, that's it. You just get your license and we'll work a deal. And at the time, I was working for H&M Construction, who was probably the most successful construction company in the state of Tennessee. And I had it made. I was working 8 hours a day, come in at 8 and get off at 5, and I hated it. That was not me.
Yeah.
So I said, we'll talk some more. And then I thought about the questions that I needed to ask him, which was, how am I going to do this? Because I've got a family. I said, if you'll give me the same money I'm making, if you'll pay my insurance, my health insurance, and I'll consider it. He said, well, I'm gonna do more than that. I said, okay. He said, I'm gonna let you make commissions. I said, commissions? I said, what does that mean? He said, you're gonna get percentage of everything you sell on top of what you're doing. Yeah. And I thought, that sounds good, because I felt like the more I worked, the luckier I got, the more I'd make. Mm-hmm. So it kind of began like that. I went and got my real estate license and my insurance license, and once I got them, then I turned in my resignation with H&M, and I just went to work, and I worked 7 days a week then. Yeah. But I loved every minute of it because it was just so much fun. Mm-hmm. And I got to deal with all the people. Living, as you both of you know, living in a small town has lots of advantages. People say, well, they know everything you do. Well, that's true, mm-hmm. but it's okay if you're not doing too bad. If you're out there and they see you mm-hmm. Working every day, it does have an effect on how well you do. Yeah. So I just started, and then from there I just got stronger and stronger, and my reputation began to come out there that, if you see his car, it's your driveway, that's what he's going to do. He's going to get your house, and he's going to sell it. Yeah. So that's kind of the way that went to start out with.
I think it's very interesting just from the fact that you said, you were working the 8 to 5 and it wasn't you. You didn't enjoy it. And just funny how me being here today came from somebody who didn't like working a 9 to 5 or an 8 to 5 job. And that's what Rural Empires is all about, right? I mean, we're trying to show that different pathway and the different opportunities you can take. And just in this, you can see how it develops too. I mean, maybe you're going to be the granddad for your grandson in this situation. And I think that's just incredible. Not only that we get to see the example of him and how he started and having that same mindset that Rural Empires is trying to help people with, and then seeing it develop all the way down through the generations. I think that's pretty incredible. So I'm going to go on to the next question. How do you typically research and evaluate your potential investments? And then also just stay informed about what's going on.
Nobody does it the same. Yeah. And I've told Josh, and I told Bradley, and I've told, don't do it my way. My way is just only the way I can do it. And I've always said my instincts guided me. Yeah. Whatever deal I pursued, it was my instincts told me what to do and what not to do, or should I do it or should I not do it. And obviously, you've got to know the market. I mean, you've got to know what you're dealing with as far as the current market conditions. Mm-hmm. And from there, my biggest, I'd have to say, is execute. Yes. If you see a deal, and you don't go through with it, then you hadn't done anything. Yeah. And because I can tell you, if you don't do it as soon as possible, there's 5 guys that are back here going to do it and take you out. Yeah. So when you know the deal's good, just go do it. I mean, sign the papers, do whatever. Go get your financing. Always have your financing lined up. That's number one. You can't go buy a deal if you don't know where your money's going to come from. Yeah. So it's critical to have that in place, is financing.
That's interesting, just kind of hearing how you go about investing. I want to look to my dad and, maybe see how he's learned from that and maybe how he implements it in his day-to-day. Maybe see the difference here and show that, there are different pathways. So, Dad, what would you say about that?
So I would first say that participation is basically the main point that my father hit on, and I am a big believer in that. I know I share that throughout our different videos, is that participating and getting in the game. But the way I evaluate properties is I was fortunate because I have a business partner who is very astute in economics and in due diligence. And another thing that I did was I participated in my father and I went to a Get Motivated seminar that Zig Ziglar put on, and a man named James Smith came out and spoke about real estate. He was not the main speaker, but he was the main speaker for me. Yeah. And I quickly joined his mentorship program, and they taught me all about how to break down property and the different ways to evaluate properties. Different strategies require different evaluations. If you're buying a mobile home park, well, it has an evaluation that there is a more tailored evaluation to how to break that down. And if you're doing a multifamily, or if you're doing a commercial property or residential, there's different strategies that can be implemented depending on what your ultimate end goal is. So I think that participation is number one. Number two is getting mentorship and diving into not just my father. I had the blessing of having him, but I remember meeting with Mr. Jerry Flippin, who would give me advice along the way, and Mr. Mark Moore. Haven't seen him in a little while, but he was there and had about 20 properties during the time. So mentorship and surrounding myself with people that were in the game and getting educated with the different perspective strategies that people employed throughout the community.
It's just it's interesting for me, looking on the outside in, hearing you both talk about how you go about investing, and I'm sure it's interesting for Harrison too. And there's nothing bad about either way. It's just like when I hear you talk about it, it seems like a more simplistic way. We're going to get it done, execute, and that's how some people are. Like some people are like that. They may not have every little step mapped out or like all the details, but they execute, and that's what they do, and that's how they're successful. And so I think it's good that I see it from that standpoint. And then also, breaking down some strategies and doing some joint ventures and using lots of different resources and still getting the big picture done, but just going at it from different angles and strategies. I think that's valuable for me. Granddaddy, I want to ask about, can you describe a particular successful investment that you've made and what made it successful?
Without bragging, so to speak, but 98% of all my deals have been successful.
Yeah.
Now, there's been some bigger than others, but the little ones help make the big ones.
Yeah.
So the way I've always looked at it, I look at every deal on its own merit. And sometimes I may look at it from a long-term investment or a short-term, because you don't really know what it's going to be.
Yeah.
You don't know if it's going to be short-term or long-term. So I've been fortunate to make good decisions, I think, in my investments. And I've only had a few that didn't go as good as I've planned, but over hundreds and hundreds of investments, they've worked.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, that's about...
To me, it kind of just, it's back to that execute mindset. When you kind of have that mindset and you get whatever you're working on, you get it done. I believe that's a big part of it, which is great. Dad, do you have anything on that?
So the most successful deal that I've done is hard to label, because each one had its own character.
Yeah.
Each deal had its own character. But there is one that particularly stands out, and that is my first big deal.
Yeah.
I had purchased, I think at the time I was at 3 or 4 houses, but then I put a 40-house subdivision under contract that was in a town nearby.
Yeah.
And it was a tougher area. It was a lower income area. And I do remember that when I looked at it, it was the purchase price that I was putting on it was $750,000. I know that the guy that had owned it previous to me paid $180,000 for it, and he shared with me that he put about $200,000 in it. And people thought I was crazy because I was willing to give him the $750,000.
Yeah.
But I would encourage in investing, not being distracted by what somebody else paid or what somebody else may make. Ultimately, is the deal good for me based on the strategy I intend to employ? It's only within your ego that you can get tied up, and it's not going to do you any justice in being able to acquire the property focusing on what they paid or what they're making, but what I'm going to pay versus what I'm going to make.
Yeah.
And that really has zero to do with what the other party that's selling played a role. Now, the reason that was so valuable to me was, one, it was stepping out on a limb and getting way outside of my comfort zone. But two, because I didn't have that kind of capital. During that time, I had only made $13,000 the year before. And when I went to go acquire the loan, the bank was like, yes, we'll do you an 85-15, but we want to see that you have 15% down and have a good cushion in an account set up with us that will signal to us that you have that ability. Now, at the time, I already had experience of managing 120 properties at the time, so I did have management experience, and I don't want that to get missed in the picture. But really, the reason that I think it was the most valuable, in a sense, is because I had to go out and raise capital. My father was, at the time, not willing to be a cosign, and rightfully so, by the way. And it was healthy for me to have to go out there and knock on doors, so to speak, and make phone calls. And I remember calling lists of people trying to raise the capital to do it. And then something marvelous happened. Like in the 9th inning of the deal, when I was about to lose my earnest money and the deal was going to fall apart, and I had months invested in the due diligence and lots of no's from private investors investing with me, I pulled up to this man's home and went in, and I was with him maybe a total of 5 minutes. And he looked at this big binder that I had put together. I and my partner had put together of due diligence. He looked at that, he flipped it back, tossed it behind him on his desk. He looked at me and he said, "What do you need? What do you want?" And I told him I needed 160 grand, and I needed it, I'd offer 8%, but it'd be a second on the property. And he wrote that check on a regular size checkbook. Now, in my mind, the $160,000 check was the size of this table we're sitting at. But it was a regular check. He wrote it, and then he went to go hand it to me, and I got my hand on it, and he said, "Now you got to do me a favor and make me a promise." And that caught me off guard. Of course, I'm sweating. My palms are sweating. My back's sweating. I'm just a nervous wreck. And he says, "The next one, I want equity." So 2 things I want to point out there. One is I had not offered equity into the deal to get the money. And 2, that's how small of $160,000 was like gargantuan. And this is back in 2007. Yeah. So money was different. But when he took that check, and he has written this check, wrote it like it was a postage stamp, and then already has signaled, though I have proved nothing up front, that there was more money available, which was the ding, 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 that money is available if you have the right deal that somebody has confidence in. So I think that's the major change in my life as it applies to investing.
And there's a lot of different skills that you had to implement that you probably hadn't done before. Like you said, you were going out on a limb and you were trying to raise this capital, and you had to get people to trust you, and that's a difficult place to be in, but lots of skills that probably helped you later down the road also. And that brings me back to you, Granddaddy. I want to ask you, what do you think is the most important quality an investor should have, or some of the most important qualities?
For me, and that's all, everybody has a different angle or different method that they use to determine whether it's a good investment or whatever. Yeah. I want to address, I remember that deal he did, and I thought to myself, "Oh, he's fixing to he's going to lose his butt here early on," because I had done some investments similar to his, not nearly as big, but these were lower income properties, and they're just hard to do good with, because you have very little chance of the appreciation. Yeah. If you get a low-end property, it's always going to be a low-end property. I mean, most 99% of the time. But anyway, when he made that work, I thought, I had people tell me when I did deals, he's going to lose his tail. Well, that always motivated me, is to think when somebody thought that I had made a bad deal, that I was determined not to let that happen, because of the reputation. I mean, you either get a reputation of doing things good, or you get a reputation of not. And if you get one that's not, it's hard to raise money. Yeah. It's hard to go to a bank. It's hard to do anything if you get a reputation of making bad deals. So with that being said, for me, it's always been my uncanny way of seeing things that I think I can make profitable. Yeah. And that's simplistic, but that's the way I've always done every deal. I try to look at the market conditions, good or bad, and there again, we can't control those. Yeah. What we can control is how we see it and buy it. Mm-hmm. Because all my life I've heard you make your money the day you buy something, and that's what he did. He made his money the day he bought that property, not the day he sold it. Yeah. So it turned out good. And another thing about he's always amazed me, because I tell everybody, if they put the Golden Gate Bridge up for sale, he'd be the first to make an offer on it and not have a clue exactly, but he just feels like that if it's a deal that he thinks he can make work, he's going to do it.
Yeah.
And he's determined, and I think that's a uniqueness that you have to have. Mm-hmm. You cannot be shy. You can't be questioning yourself all the time. And I bought deals, and he has bought deals that after I got them, I thought, now what am I going to do? You know, but they always work. So
I think that's a very important skill. Just I can imagine myself just throwing myself out in a deal, and it's like looking up at a mountain, you know, and trying to figure out how I'm going to get this done. But it's just one step at a time, right? And I think that's an important mindset that you have to have is, you know, even me, I've learned that, I feel like in real estate in the past 6 months, whenever the situation seems to have gone bad, or whenever, you know, emotions are high, and, you know, these are people's, you know, homes and land that they're going to build their forever house on. And it's a high intense situation, but the most important thing is just, you know, keep calm. It's going to be okay. You know, we're going to wake up tomorrow, Lord willing. And it's just, you know, chipping at it one step at a time. And I think that's great that you pointed that out. And then I want to kind of ask you, because I know here at Rural Empires, we're all about collaboration and joint ventures. I want to kind of ask you how that's played into your career and how it, you know, fosters in your industry.
Well, mostly I've worked independently on my own, excuse me, for all these years. However, I've had 2 partnerships that I recall that were very successful. And I think I chose them because they had they had the ability to pull me out if I didn't make it. What I offered them was my ability to work it and make it happen. Yeah. And both of them ended up making a lot of money, and they didn't do anything except sign the same note I did. Yeah. But I was never envious or jealous that they were making as much as I was, because I was making money, and that was more important to me. But I needed them, I thought at that time, to do the deals, and they never questioned me. They let me keep the books, do all the work, run it, and they just got a check. Yeah. So I think, but I always sought advice from people that was successful in the real estate or business world. So I think you always have to reach out and pull knowledge from those that's already been before you. Yeah. Kind of what you guys are doing, because they have a lot to tell you and how they got there.
Just from being in it and, you know, talking to a bunch of prominent figures in the community, it's people do want to help. Like the seasoned investors and the seasoned people in your industry, they want to help you because, you know, they remember when they were at the time when they were getting started, and it's not easy for anybody, right? So it's just, I do agree it's important. And it kind of rolls into my next question of, can you discuss the role of mentorship in your career?
Yes, I mean, that's always been strong for me. Whether I've reached out to, well, my teachers that was good to me, coaches, businessmen, all those people had a real influence on my life, and without naming them, but I mean, I could always go to them with questions about how they would see this, that I was going to try to do. And some of them told me they didn't think I should do it, you know, they would, but I did it. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. So, but mentorship is it's invaluable in everything you do, because you got to have close friends and associates that you can rely on to give you good information, and not have something that, knowing that they not wanting anything back, they just trying to help you. Yeah. That's big.
And I think it's important to point out, it doesn't have to be a collaboration thing. Like, you don't have to go into it with a mentor together, but it's always just seeking out advice. Because if you do want to do it on your own, that's fine. I mean, we just heard the example of my granddad talking about, he did do a lot of it on his own, but he still reached out to all these different mentors and people that he valued in his life. And I think it's important to point that out. And just something, we've learned with being in our coaching is also when you pay attention, right? Because you've got money on it, and if you don't pay attention to the advice, then there goes your $20,000, right? Well, why'd you go in the first place? And another point to that is, I know we all love each other and we all do good, but sometimes it's just good to hear from somebody else.
Absolutely.
And I think it's, just important to point both of those out. So we're moving on to our next question. What are some of the key challenges you've encountered, and how did you navigate through some of those, if you have any particular or just an overall view of it?
Well, when I think about that, it was important to me to have a good reputation in my business. Mm-hmm. And I spent all I could do was to prove to people that if you deal with me, you're going to get a fair deal, and I'm going to work my butt off. Yeah. And I think so. Reputation is everything in almost any business you do. Mm-hmm. And you can, obviously you can have good reputations or bad reputations, but I wanted somebody to know when they saw me in the gym or at the ball fields or at church or at a party. Mm-hmm. I wanted them to know my name was Lynn Arnold, but I was a realtor. I was going to be a realtor, and I was going to somebody insurance, and that I took a lot of pride in that. Yeah. And therefore, to get that reputation, you have to work at it every day. Mm-hmm. You have to let people know. Again, like I said, I used to laugh. They say, well, I saw your car over so-and-so's house, and I saw a sign the next day. Well, I went there particularly so I could list that property. Mm-hmm. So that was my focus. And again, I was trying to get that reputation. When you see me, something fixing to happen. Yeah. I mean, I'm fixing to sell you something, yeah, or I'm on a list just so I can sell it. Uh-huh. So I think that, to me, a reputation is a good reputation, not just but a good one. And do what you say you're going to do. I just can't emphasize that enough. If you tell somebody you're going to be there at 9 o'clock, dadgummit, be there 5 till if you have to, but yeah, be there. And don't show up making excuses of why you got caught by the train or you got something happen, because if you live in Milan, we know we got a train, so you have to allow for that.
I like that, and I guess reputation, it's not something we necessarily talk about as much on the channel, but it's almost like the revealed fact with collaboration, right? If you don't have good collaboration with people, then people aren't going to want to work with you, and that's one of our big things. So yes, having a good reputation and being able to build that reputation, because like you said, you don't just get it. If you can't uphold it, then you don't have it in the first place, right? So I think that's important. How would you say you approach decision-making skills in your professional life, especially like when there's a complex situation in front of you? Like we say, sometimes these big deals seem like a mountain to climb, and it's like, how do you navigate through that?
Well, I always use the same analogy of my gut feeling, mm-hmm, or my first thoughts when I go look at a deal is, how do I see that as a way going forward to make it work? Yeah. And from a positive standpoint. And then I always go to those people that I rely on for good advice, mm-hmm, that doesn't necessarily have to have anything back. They just want to help me. Yeah. And that included my bankers, my accountants, my friends, anybody that I thought that I saw in the community, mm-hmm, that I'm always looking at what they're doing and how they're doing it. And those are the people that I would go to, and that's an advantage, again, of being in a small community that we're in, and yeah, you're going to see that happen. You're going to see that more and more, because you're going to be reaching out. I mean, you got your dad and I and others, but you're going to, as you grow in this business, you're going to be using more and more of that of people several years ahead of you, yeah, that you can rely on for good information. So, that's kind of the way I've approached it.
I mean, that's the whole point of this interview, right? Is because we're trying to broadcast out to everyone who is watching, so that, and for me and Harrison also, like I said, we're learning, and we're the ones who made the questions because we were curious. And we like to say that wealth loves speed, right? And that's right. What am I if I don't try to live that? And so, yes, I love my granddad and I love y'all, but at the end of the day, I want to, take that success to the next level too. That's right. And I can do that by learning from y'all's experiences and deals in real estate. And I think this is going to be a great question to move next, because I want to ask you, Granddaddy, can you think of a moment or like a major setback and elaborate on how you bounce back from that, maybe a particular deal?
This is going to be easy.
Oh, boy.
And this is probably the easiest one of all the questions, and your dad is going to understand this one big. At the time, I was really kind of being successful in real estate business, and I was getting a little ego, saying, I was selling houses, and I was buying stuff, and everything was going good. And this opportunity came up for me to go in the restaurant business. And I thought, well, I can do this. I mean, what the heck? Everything I touch seems like it works. So one of my mentors and one of my best friends, we had lunch about every week. His name was Tommy Ross, and he owned a trucking company. And I just treasured his advice all the time, although I didn't take it. But we were having lunch, and I said, Mr. Ross, I said, I'm thinking about going in the restaurant business. And he paused and he said, now, Lynn, there's 3 things you don't want to do. I said, well, what are they? And he said, you don't want a restaurant business, and you don't want a tire shop, and you don't want a service station. And I said, I can understand the tire shop and I can understand the service station, because I know when I was a kid, I used to work at the service station. That's back when actually you changed tires and pump the gas and all that. But anyway, I said, I just don't understand this restaurant business, because everybody's got to eat, and if you just got got good food and you got a good, it looks to me like that's just easy. I just don't understand that. So anyway, we kind of let it go, and as your dad knows, I bought a building and opened up this restaurant, and I had another guy told me in the restaurant business. He said, I said, when will I know what to really do? He said, well, I can tell you, when you start losing so much money, you just close the door. He said, when it looked like you can't dig out of that hole, you just shut the door. So sure enough, your daddy was working his butt off 14 hours a day, and we were just not doing well. We were trying, but everything just went wrong. Help was wrong, equipment was wrong, everything went wrong. So about 10 months into the deal, I decided I'd lost enough money, so I told Josh, I said, close the door. I said, we're shutting her down. And he was glad to hear that, because he thought, my goodness, good. It's killing me more than it is you. Yeah. So anyway, we shut the door, and I thought it was over, and I thought I'd already lost everything I could. And then people started coming in the office and saying, I've got a $25 gift certificate. What am I going to do with it? Well, they'd bought gift certificates that he'd sold, and, no residence. So I had to turn around and keep giving people money that had a gift certificate. So I just laugh about it. So when me and Mr. Ross would go to lunch after that, he was such a gentle man and kind man. He never would bring it up. I said, okay, let me hear it. Let just go ahead and give it to him. He just grinned, and that's all he did. He just grinned, and that was enough to tell me that he tried to tell me. Yeah. So I didn't listen, and but I did survive it, and he survived it. And I think we both, be honest with you, I think we both learned a lot about what it can take to fail at something and not throw in the towel and say everything's, it's not over just because one thing didn't work. And so that's an easy one for me to recall.
And I don't know directly how you bounce back from it, but I do know that building's now, been one of the longest restaurants as long as I can remember being here, and a great little family locally owned business. So
well, I did get I sold the building and financed it. Yeah. So I did recover it. It took 20 years, but I got it back. in the short term as far as my return. So it wasn't all bad. It's just a restaurant business. It was not for me.
And we've heard that, that story that my dad has talked about with, him being in it and working it, and the transition of the working in the restaurant to real estate, right? And how that mindset shift was there. And so it's good to hear both sides of that. Granddad, I do want to ask you, just because, I know we've had the market crash 2008 and then also COVID in 2020. And I just want to ask, how have global events like that affected your investment approach?
Well, again, I feel so fortunate because I've never known what a downturn was personally. I knew that we went through the 80s. I remember that, and interest rates went to 17% another. And I was borrowing money at 11 and a half and was still selling houses. And I went through it just pretty easy. I don't know how, but I did. And I paid all my, because I owed a lot of money at that time because I'd borrowed money. But I was lucky enough that I had individuals that loaned me money much lower than the rate with just a signature to say that I'd pay them back. No collateral. And that just doesn't happen today.
Yeah.
But I had probably over $2 million worth of loans that I was given from several individuals. They were getting rate, but they were getting much less rate than the banks.
Yeah.
So, and then again, I didn't have to use my credit because it was just privately. So
Which
I've
goes
always,
back to the reputation.
I think that I would agree with that. That's because they believed in me, and that meant a lot. And I talk about it all the time with people, that when I tell a story about I wouldn't have ever gone where I'm at had I not been for those people.
Yeah.
I might have, but I wouldn't get there as near as fast.
Yeah.
Because they let me have money. Again, with I said, I promise to pay you.
And I think it's also interesting here. You said you were borrowing money at like 11, 12, like at the bank. And, me just getting started, I remember when, in high school, just kind of me listening and going along for some of my dad's deals. He's borrowing money at like 3 and 4%. And then I hear, my granddad was borrowing money for 12% when he was first getting started. So it just shows that real estate, and investing, it works. It's not just if the market's like this, or if you can borrow money at this rate. It can work at any rate. It's all about how you can make it work. Exactly right. And I think that's very important to point out because, we're freaking out over 7 and 8% interest rates, but he just said he got it done with 11%. So I think that's an important fact to point out. And then kind of go along with that question, how would you say the investing landscape has changed since you began?
Very little. I think again, you just have to work within the what you have to work with. Mm-hmm. That means the rates, the prices, it all flows. It kind of, you just have to deal with what you got, and you can't just because you were borrowing money at 3% and doing well, and it goes to 7 or 8. You don't stop. Yeah. You just have to adjust, and I think again, the markets are going to change, and you got to be able to change with them and go and not let that be a negative. Just adapt to it, and keep on going. I'm doing probably as much now as I was a few years ago, because when I see an opportunity, I just take it for what it is. In other words, if I got to use money at 8%, which the big difference is now, I don't borrow much money at all. I do it just to keep a record of borrowing money, but I try to use my own money at my age, because I think I can still make more money by not have to pay interest on stuff. Yeah. So conditions are always going to change. I can promise you that as long as you're in it, you're going to see a lot of changes, and you just deal with them.
And I believe it. And that also kind of rolls in, like, how have your investment strategies evolved, or have they? And how do you balance your long-term and short-term investments?
I've always, again, I hate to say this repetitively, but my instincts drive me to do what I do as far as in my investments in short term and long term. Now, I can sit here and tell you, I wish I'd never sold anything because of the way it's increased from the time I started. It's just unreal.
Yeah.
I mean, what I could have bought, what I was buying houses for or buying property for. But at the same time, I took those gains and bought other stuff that I thought had a bigger return. So I do it today. I hold some stuff, and some stuff I want to turn. But more today for me, it's how much time I got to put into it. My time is not like it was several years ago. I just don't want to be bogged down with. I want to sleep at night, and I don't want to be knowing I got every minute's got to be going after this property, making sure it's going to work. Yeah. So if it causes me to lose sleep, I'm gonna sell it. I'm gonna get rid of it.
Yeah.
And then the ones that are making good money that I can go to sleep over, I keep them.
Yeah. And I think that is important to point out because it's just another thing of how, I mean, there's just so many different paths in real estate, and it's dependent upon who you are as a person and how you want to spend your time. Because like you said, as time went on and the family and other things like that became, not that they weren't valuable before, right? But they became more valuable and you want to spend more time with your family. And, you know, at first it is a grind. You've got to, you know, put in the hours and put in the work, and then you may not have as much money at first. Well, then when you get older, you have more money, but you don't want to give up as much time. So it's just finding a balance of what you want to do and how you want to live your life. And that's what I love so much about it, just being able to, you know, do that yourself.
And I'd like to share this because I believe it directly is how it applies to this, especially if you're out there and you're watching and you're younger. If you're in your late teens, you're in your 20s, your 30s, early 30s, we don't appreciate that time is fleeting and our life is fleeting. It's getting away from us faster. And that time that we spend with those people that are important to us and doing those things that are important to us become more real. And if you haven't had a mission at your age to get yourself in an economic position where you can enjoy that time, especially because you just never know how health will play a role, or the health of those that you love will play a role. When someone's sick, do you have the freedom? Are you positioned where you have the freedom to go be with them? When Granddaddy was sick, the blessing of knowing that whatever he needed when he was down, that I could be there, and I didn't have to, because I had, my granddaddy's important, but I have a wife and children. So if I wasn't economically positioned to be able to be there for to be there for him, well, something's going to suffer if you have not done the things necessary to position you appropriately. That just is such a big piece. It's such a big piece that I'm trying to share to you. And really, Rural Empires, the whole mission is to be able to help teach and encourage people that a lifestyle of freedom is more than money. It's money coupled, it's not a number. Wealth and success is not a number. It's a lifelong process, and it's a state of being. If you look up wealth in the dictionary, it has nothing to do with economics. It says a state of being. And it's being in that state of life where you're free to do those things that you enjoy with the people you love. And so I think that's the biggest piece.
I agree. Granddad, I want to ask you, so I want to ask if you've ever been invested in something unconventional or unusual. So I guess the usual for you would be like residential properties, right? Because that's where you've mainly been, in commercial properties. So what, maybe when you've gone out on a limb and invested in something else?
This is another easy one, okay?
Okay.
Before I got in the real estate business,
Uh-huh.
and I was working for H&M Construction. I think I was making $300 a week, which was to me was a lot of money, and I can't remember before taxes or whatever. But anyway, somebody said you need to get in the tanning business, and I said, oh, because that was new at that time, tanning booths and all. So I said, well, yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna open up a tanning salon. So I had another guy, a young guy that. His family had money. Matter of fact, his daddy owned H&M. But anyway, he wanted to go in with me. So I went to the bank up here, and I told them I need to borrow $15,000. And they said, what for? I said, well, I'm going into the tanning business. And they said, well, what do you know about it? I said, well, nothing really, but surely I can do this. And so sure enough, he said, now, Lynn, now this comes back to this reputation in the small town. I wasn't making $300 a week, and I didn't have any money. I mean, I had no assets, zero. So he said, well, I'm gonna give it to you. And I was so proud when I come out of there. But he told me, he said, now, Lynn, if this don't work, it's gonna be a lot harder to pay it back than it was to get it. I said, oh, don't worry about that. I got this. So we went to Union City because that was the only area at that time was available. So I went up there and I rented a space in the mall, and we got those tanning beds and we put them in, and had this banker come by right there and located in that mall, wanted to know if he could get our business. And I said, well, sure. We don't. I deal in Milan, but it makes sense for me to open up a bank account here. I said, why don't you try it? He said, oh, I'd be glad to. I said, I'll give you a free trial here. And it was, they had said at that time, 1 minute was all you need, to start out with. Well, I thought, 1 minute, I want to make sure this works. So I put it on 3 minutes. And he called me the next day. He said, Lynn, he said, I got to give you some good advice. I said, what is it? He said, I was at the movie last night and I got to turn it and switch. He said, you just actually burnt me up. So my wife said, look at me, I pulled my clothes off. She said, what happened to you? So I burned up my banker almost. And needless to say, in 2.5 months, we were out of business. We were broke. I done lost $15,000 and I had to pay it back, making $300 a week. And every time I'd go to make that payment, I'd want to cry, thinking, how in the world did I do this? So that's about as unconventional as you can get. But you know what? The last time I made that last payment, and I thought, man, surely I'll learn something out of this. But that's before I got into the real estate business. Yeah. And so that real estate business has been the answer to all my prayers, I guess you'd say, from not getting in more bad investments. Yeah. But that's a good story because it happened. 3 months I was in a tanning business.
That's a pretty good story right there. And Dad, I also want to direct this question to you also because I know you've started to invest in a bunch of different things, so I want to direct it towards you.
Well, I've participated in lots of unconventional. I would have to, I'm in a time of my life where I am meditating through the many unconventional investments I've tried to make. So instead of pointing one out, what I would ask of myself and for someone who's in our audience is to really do your homework when you're going to look at something like that, because I have participated in many forms of unconventional investing and strategies, and ultimately I haven't had one hit yet that took me to the big time, so to speak. What has taken me to the big time is doing the simple things that I understood well. Now, I would build upon that. So if it was residential, then maybe I start into multifamily, duplex, triplex, and then from that it was, big apartment buildings, and from there it was commercial buildings, but it was in the same vein. So it was not running off and chasing this or chasing that. I would say exercise caution is a start, and just for one experienced unconventional investor to another, I found that actually of all the unconventional different businesses that I've invested in, that is time that I have not directed towards the thing that I understood well. And though I've had a lot of great successes, and I feel like at a certain level I've obtained, the peace and serenity of economic freedom for the lifestyle I want to live. It's amazing when I think about if I would have just spent that time just doing more of what I understood and been successful at, where I could be as a result. Now, it's hard for me to want to take that back. There's something in my nature that just wants me to try new things and push my limits and get outside of my comfort zone. And I feel confident that lots of lessons I have gained that I've been able to employ in what I did already know by doing those. But ultimately, I caution unconventional. Conventional being what you already understand pretty good versus what you don't. That's what I would say as it relates to unconventional investing. Again, there's so many. I think I participated in every network marketing company that's ever came through town. I have had carpet cleaning companies, which I thought was conventional, but it was harder to do. It's like my daddy said, and like I've learned, it's a lot easier. It sounds like if you're a novice, you hadn't been out there in the business world, money seems like it's the hard piece. Well, if you got a reputation for paying people back their money, you got 10 years under your belt, 15, 20 years paying people back, it gets real easy to get the money.
Yeah.
So then you become a little bit dangerous to yourself and to the people that will invest with you, because you want to, they want to be a part of something successful too. And if they just think, well, he's always been successful at this, maybe I'll be glad to loan him the money to do that. So I just would share it in that vein, that conduit, if I could.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out the fact that you had said, if you had done more of just what you had already known, then who knows where you may have been today. But it is okay to do those unconventional things sometimes, but realizing that you already had a base. It's not that like, oh, you went and sold one house in real estate, then you're looking for the next hot thing, and then the next hot thing. It's like you had already built a base, so even if you may have taken a loss on this, it wouldn't necessarily put you in the hole. It's just one of those deals where, it is good to, try new things and stuff like to that manner, but, making sure at the end of the day, we're all going to be all right. Granddad, I want to ask you, I know you're a busy man, okay? How do you prioritize and manage your time effectively, especially when dealing with multiple responsibilities?
I write down everything I think I need to get done in a day, and I'm still old school. I put it on a piece of paper, and sometimes I look down, I'm thinking, I got 25 things I'm supposed to get done today. I said, how in the world? But you just gotta do it and mark it off when you get it done. A lot of them are simple, but they need to be done. So I think just wake up every day knowing that you got something to do. And I think for me personally, that's why I'm still working, because idle time for me would not be good. I'm not one that needs to be idle. I need to be, every day I need to wake up knowing I've got to focus, and I've got people that need me to do something for them, which is awesome, whether it be my grandchildren or my children. Even though I got all this other work that I create, but I'm always available. If I'm needed, I'm going to be there. And I think that's worth everything, knowing that I have that. I put myself in position to do those things, because I can stop over here if I want to, because I prioritize where I want to help somebody or where I want to help my family especially.
And I think that's something that, my dad, he does it on his Evernote app. I know that you make your list of things that you need to get done, and you've also, kind of passed that skill down to me. I maybe don't do it as much, but I still try to, make it a habit, because I know it is a good habit, especially when you have, it feels like a billion things going on in your life. And Granddad, I want to ask you, what advice would you give aspiring professionals, like, you know, me and Mr. Harrison over here getting started out? What would be your advice to us looking to succeed in real estate investing?
Surround yourself with positive people. I mean, I can't say enough how important it is that you find people that are positive about whatever they're doing. Negative will just ruin everything. It's just the most unhealthy thing I can think of is being around negative people. And they do exist, but I've always made it my priority to if I was around it and I saw it, I just move on, because if you hang around positive people, good things will happen. I don't know how to say it, but they do. Good things always happen being around positive. So that'd be my advice for anybody. I don't care what you're doing.
And Dad, I'm sure you would take a similar stance on that, but I also do want to ask you if you have anything to add to that.
Personal development. I mean, I've already hit on it. I believe that ultimately, Jim Rohn said it this way: find yourself working harder on yourself than you do on your job. So if you're constantly challenging yourself to be better than you were yesterday, I think that's the greatest little ism that I've employed is realizing that the greatest danger to my success is myself. When I look in that mirror and I'm shaving in the morning, is realizing that I'm personal responsibility, taking responsibility for what's going on. You can't control outside circumstances, but you can control how you respond to them and how that you'll position yourself to deal with those challenges. And so personal responsibility and personal development, I think, are the keys to being able to put yourself in the right position.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that I know we focused on, just as for me growing up, is, you know, always getting better every day. What are we doing to get better today? And it's, you know, my granddad's like, what we sell today, you know, it's just a good, healthy habit of, you know, getting better every day and trying to take that extra step, because if you are idle, it's hard to get the engine started again once you go idle. And so that's some good stuff. Granddad, what do you believe are the most exciting opportunities for innovation and growth in real estate in the next coming years?
Oh man, it's just, opportunities are so abundant. I mean, I can't even touch the opportunities I see for young people today. For everybody that wants to get involved and wants to participate in buying some property. I encourage, but I will say this, and I've learned this over the years: not everybody is suited to invest. I understand that. I mean, I've been around too many people that's told me, man, I'd like to do this, and then I'll fix them up and put them into something, and they don't take care of it. They think it's over just because they get it. So, and they'll say, can you sell this for me, because I can't do this, or I'm not willing to do this. The time it takes to get, when you get a renter, you get a bad renter. Boy, that's discouraging. I mean, and then if you, like Josh and I, you got 50 of them, you got a bunch of bad ones, it's real discouraging. But anyway, I would say if you have a desire to invest, I think it's as good as it's ever been, maybe even better in some respects, to go out here. And competition is tough too, by the way. He and I go to the courthouses, and we're out here looking for deals all the time. And guess what? There's a lot of investors out there, and we get beat. I mean, I lose. There's one, as he recalls, that I was determined not to get beat on, because I found out I was bidding against myself. And he said, Daddy, you got this. You've been against you. I said, well, I'm gonna make sure I get it. So we laughed about it, but I did get it.
Yeah.
And guess what? It was good. I made money on it, and it even though we laugh about it, but so opportunities are out there. I encourage everybody, your listeners especially, to just be vigilant and do one. That first one is always the hardest.
Yeah.
That first one is the most difficult. But if you do it, it becomes easier and easier. Mm-hmm. And as you know, I'm trying to encourage you to just go get one.
Yeah.
Go get on your own. Mm-hmm. I want you to do it on your own, you know, so you'll know and appreciate how valuable it is to start.
Yeah. And I agree. You know, we working on it right now. We gonna get her done. And I do want to ask you that same question of what do you see as being some, new opportunities in real estate in the coming years?
So there is the concept of arbitrage. Arbitrage being where you actually don't even own the asset, mm-hmm. but you have a strategy that you can employ in somebody else's property, but contractually take over the rights to the property, so that it's a form of subleasing. I mean, that's a more simple way of understanding it, where you get the legal rights. So there's deed and title. Most people believe that deed and title are the same, but they're actually different. The deed tells you who owns the property. Right. The title identifies who has the rights to the property. Mm-hmm. When you sign a lease, you've actually taken control of the rights to the property, as long as you're working within the boundaries of what that lease says. Yeah. Now, some leases say you can't sublease. Mm-hmm. But arbitrage, and I'm not an expertise in this, this is just one example that I see out there, is working a deal now where these young guy out of California calls, and it's a property that one of my associates has invested in, and I think feels like he's a little bit over his head. He's invested too much money. He's got a lot of money tied up. And this guy in California sees our prices and thinks it's a walk in the park. And he calls and he's asking if for money. I mean, he understands the process and is successful in other areas, and he's willing to pay what this associate of mine desires, full price, where he's going to gain the rights to sublease the property in short period of times for much larger amounts of money over the long term. I mean, the shorter big pick pieces, though it might only be 65% occupied throughout the year, that 65% will gain more income than a steady monthly income. Now, I don't know that I'm prepared to do that, but that's just one example of opportunities that are available. Certainly with social media out there and the YouTube world, the TikTok world, there are some advantages. And look, we're learning. I mean, Rural Empires, part of that is just exploring what we can do that is unique about today's world in the industry, in the industry of real estate.
Right. And then also just with Airbnb, it almost brings like a whole nother world of real estate, just like online. Instead of it being physical, it's online. And there are many opportunities in there of managing those properties. And like you said, we've heard the examples of people arbitraging with Airbnbs. And so there are some good opportunities, but at the end of the day, we also talked about, sticking to our basics and, cherishing those. And there's two sides to every coin, right? We say there's three sides. That's right. Three sides to every coin. But
go ahead and share it, what the three sides are.
There's the heads, and there's the tails, and there's the edge. And we want to, always try to find the edge. And but it's just important to know that there are new opportunities and ways to fit you and for the person you are. So Granddaddy, I want to, sum the interview up. I want to ask you, looking back, if you could give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be and why?
Oh my word!
The hitter.
The younger self, since the younger self is here.
Well, honestly, I think doing what you guys are doing that I didn't do. I was just so right here in front of me, and the way I did it is not the way it's done today, and I understand that. I'm technologically dumb, technologically dumb, and I'm willing to accept that, and that's why I hire people that can do that. To take up for my weaknesses, but I think what you're doing, this is very impressive. What y'all are trying to do, and I think it's going to work. I really believe it's going to work, and I give you high marks and Harrison for helping develop this new strategy, and the rental thing that they're doing, management companies they're doing. I wanted to do that. I didn't do it and manage all this real estate because I was managing my own real estate, all my other investments, but I knew there was a world out there that I could have developed a management company, a maintenance company, and all that, and really that was a mistake that I made. But then again, I didn't know where I'd gonna get the time.
Yeah. And
then you have to hire these people. Well, I was spending my time doing what I thought was working for me.
Yeah.
And so. I wouldn't change anything, but I realize again how what you guys are doing is going to work, and a lot of people out there that are going to see this can see things will work, but you have to do that first deal.
Yeah, you gotta execute. I love my granddad. We executing all the time. It's good. It's good. Well, I think this has been very valuable. If not for the people watching, it's been very valuable for me just to be able to get the 60 plus years of experience and sit down and ask them questions. And I hope it was beneficial to those watching. We appreciate you joining us here at Rural Empires and hope you'll join us again soon. Thank you.